Let's dive right into an explainer that is, frankly, going to send a shiver down your spine. Today, we're unpacking a story that perfectly blends deep-seated, intensely relatable human drama with the absolutely terrifying world of supernatural folklore. Get ready, because we are looking at Fields of Terror, the Carney Mystery.
To really grasp this story, we need to drop right into the middle of the nightmare. I want you to picture this. What happens when a city kid, someone who's totally used to the bright lights and constant noise of Mumbai, suddenly finds himself completely alone in the pitch black, freezing sugarcane fields of a rural village? We're talking about a silence so absolute that he can literally hear his own heartbeat. Well, this is exactly where our protagonist, a young man named Vijay, found himself on one incredibly cold night. But here's the thing, the horror he encountered out there in those fields, it didn't just appear out of nowhere.
Because, as you'll see, the true supernatural horror often begins right at home. Before we can even begin to understand the monster waiting for him in that dark sugarcane, we first have to take a hard look at the family living room. It's a classic theme, right? The most terrifying supernatural events are usually anchored in very real, very human resentments.
Which brings us to our first section, the family land dispute.
Okay, let's dive into this bitter clash of worlds. The whole catalyst for this nightmare is a conflict over ancestral farming land between an uncle and his nephew. Now, on one side we have Vijay. He's the legal heir, a city dweller who's finally returned to the village after 10 long years away. And he just wants to claim his rightful share of his late father's property. And honestly, from a purely legal standpoint, his claim is absolutely valid. But then, look at the other side. You have Uncle Raghu. Raghu is the one who stayed behind. He actually worked the land with his own 2 hands. When Vijay's grandparents were on their deathbeds, the city relatives didn't show up. It was Raghu who cared for them day and night. So it's this incredibly tense clash where both sides have a completely valid perspective. You've got legal right going head-to-head with a lifetime of sweat equity.
And man, you can see exactly how that sweat equity just boils over into pure rage. The source material paints this incredibly vivid picture of Uncle Raghunath pacing in the dead of night. His body is literally burning with anger despite the freezing air outside, and his eyes are just red with absolute fury. He's muttering to himself, saying, "I won't let my years of hard work go to waste. I will destroy everything." The sheer thought of this pampered city boy swooping in to steal his life's work, it pushes him right to the absolute edge.
Meanwhile, over in another house, Vijay's mother senses this boiling resentment. She desperately pleads for peace. She looks at Vijay and asks, why fan the flames of an extinguished fire? She's begging him to just let it go, pointing out that, hey, they've survived in Mumbai without the farm's profits for a decade now. But Vijay, he completely refuses to back down from what he sees as his father's rightful legacy. So the tension in this village is just skyrocketing.
Which leads into Section 2, Raghunath's terrifying intention.
So, we shift back to Raghunath's house. He bursts through the door, just venting his utter frustration to his wife, Vatsala. He is dead set on stopping this Mumbai boy at absolutely any cost. Not a single inch of village land is going to him. But here is where it gets truly terrifying. It's the solution Vatsala offers. Dropping her voice to a sinister whisper, she doesn't suggest calling a lawyer or the village council. She says, "That tree far outside the village. You know the one? With all the slips and needles attached." Just the mere mention of this tree sends a visible shiver down even the furious Raghunath's spine. They aren't just arguing over property anymore. They are crossing a hard line from a bitter family dispute straight into the realm of dark, forbidden magic.
After that dark conversation, a few days pass. Now, the village appears completely normal on the surface, but there's this heavy, unknown silence hanging in the air. You know that feeling? It's that deceptive, suffocating calm right before a massive storm. And that storm is about to break right over Vijay.
Let's move to Section 3, Invisible Shadow and Attack.
All right, let's plunge right back into that terrifying climax we teased at the very beginning. It's night. Vijay is out for his usual post-dinner walk. He's strolling down this narrow, stony path, completely boxed in by towering sugarcane fields. The moon is half hidden behind these black clouds, casting long, menacing shadows everywhere. And let's track this meticulous escalation of dread, because it's brilliant. It starts off totally normal, just crickets and the rustling of sugarcane leaves in the wind. But then, a few moments later, the rustling changes. He hears a distinct shh sound. He stops, thinks it's just his imagination, so he keeps walking. Then suddenly, the sound isn't just following him anymore, it's right beside him. A deep, sinister whisper right by his ear. That's the moment Vijay realizes the unnatural sounds in the dark aren't the wind at all. They are actively hunting him.
He slowly turns around, his heart is just pounding out of his chest, but he sees absolutely nothing, just an empty dirt road. He tries to breathe a sigh of relief, but instantly this freezing wind hits him, and then the horrific assault begins. An invisible, terrifying force violently seizes his body. He loses all physical control. He's being jerked around in the air like a broken puppet. His bones actually begin to crack as his limbs are contorted into these unnatural angles. His eyes roll upward into his skull. He's trying to scream for his life, but his throat is completely paralyzed, letting out nothing but a voiceless, terrifying gasp.
Just as this unseen entity is violently twisting him, a miracle happens. A single beam of light slices through the darkness. It's Vithal, a local villager who happened to be walking by with a flashlight. Seeing Vijay's horrifically contorted body suspended there, Vithal just lets out this piercing scream of pure terror. And that sudden human intervention, that scream, the beam of light, it breaks the entity's hold. The invisible force just snaps away, and Vijay collapses onto the stony ground, completely unconscious.
And that brings us to Section 4, Carney, a Terrifying Truth. We transition to the aftermath. Vijay wakes up in his own bed, his body feeling utterly shattered. Beside him are Vital and his own terrified mother. Now his mom, obviously trying to rationalize the horror, assumes her perfectly healthy young son has just suffered some kind of sudden, inexplicable paralytic stroke. But Vital immediately shuts that down with a chilling observation. He looks at her and says, "This is beyond a doctor's control." He explains that what he witnessed out in those fields wasn't a medical emergency. The way Vijay's limbs were twisting, as if an invisible shadow was actively wringing him out like a wet towel, that was not a disease. That was the work of a dark, unseen entity.
So the crucial point here is understanding exactly what this entity was. Vital gives it a name, Carney. For those unfamiliar, Carney is dark, vengeful magic used to curse or severely harm someone. But honestly, the most terrifying part, it doesn't just happen randomly. Carney is rooted in deep, personal malice. It is a highly targeted supernatural curse, almost always orchestrated by someone very familiar, someone right there within the village who holds a deeply personal, burning grudge.
And this brilliantly illustrates the whole tragic picture for us. On one side, you have the human motive, raw greed, deep-seated resentment, and a very grounded everyday land dispute between an uncle and his nephew. On the other side, you have the supernatural weapon, the dark magic of Carney, summoned through that dreadful tree of needles. We can see exactly how a highly relatable, almost mundane family bitterness mutated into an unimaginable nightmare. Which leaves us with one final haunting question to ponder today. Was it truly the dark magic of Carney that attacked Vijay that night in the sugarcane fields? Or is this whole story simply a terrifying metaphor for the destructive, twisting consequences of human greed? When family turns against family over a patch of dirt, maybe the supernatural curse isn't the real monster at all. Maybe the true monster is the human resentment that summoned it in the first place. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I hope this provided a clear, fascinating look into a truly chilling tale. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.